What's going on, everyone? So let's talk about Eric Dixon. Eric Dixon is one of those players that is at training camp that is going to be playing likely for the last two-way spot. If I'm being honest, I think he's probably the guy that ends up getting the last two-way spot. I personally want Arthur Kaluma. I just think another kind of a do-thero type of player would be excellent for this Lakers team. Those are the kind of guys you want alongside Luka Doncic long term, right? If you told me 3 years from now you have a do-thero and Arthur Kaluma out on the wings alongside, probably Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic, and DeAndre Ayton, I just think now you have that size, that athleticism, that versatility, that defense, and Arthur Kaluma just looks huge, man. That guy's has potential to be that, potential, the OG type, like Rob Pelinka said. But Eric Dixon is the guy that I think is most likely to earn that spot because he is probably the most NBA ready, just bucket getter, scorer in the draft. He led the nation in scoring last season in college. We didn't get to see him in Summer League because he suffered an injury, which none of us knew about. And the only reason we ever found out about it was because he got caught in a walking boot. And so they started reporting that. And then they were like, oh yeah, he just had a foot injury. So he's a guy that, a lot of kind of questions. How healthy is he? Obviously, he got to be healthy enough to where they're going into training camp because, you look at somebody like a, Darius Baisley. Unfortunately, he was somebody that, looked every bit like, hey, you got to at least get this guy a training camp invite. He should be, maybe potentially on the roster. You got to keep him in some capacity. And then he ends up getting hurt, and it looked pretty significant. Now we haven't heard anything about him. So my guess is that Eric Dixon is at least healthy enough to play, earn a spot. Lakers were really high on him. He was really high on the Lakers. I mean, he was the projected draft pick for the Lakers pretty much all, prediction season for the NBA draft. So I do think Eric Dixon is a guy that is, if you wanted to pick somebody to be, who do you think is going to, which training camp guy is most likely to make the team or at least be on a two-way deal? It is Eric Dixon. That's who it is. So Eric Dixon gives you bucket getter. He's, think of a wish Julius Randle right now, right? He is essentially what Julius Randle was when he was coming in, but Eric Dixon's actually more skilled offensively. Not necessarily right now than today's Julius Randle, but I'm talking about when the Lakers drafted him with, what was it, the 7th pick, right? Eric Dixon's a guy that's coming in who's just really offensively sound, a legit 3-level scorer, a guy that can kind of bang with the big boys, play that small ball center. He's not a guy that you really want doing that. He's more of that 4 guy that can get downhill, right? Julius Randle was always better as the pit bull, right? Or the bull period, just kind of bullying his way to the basket. Eric Dixon can give you some of that with his size and whatnot. You're talking about a guy that's 6'8", right? He's 255, 260 range. So definitely a guy that has the size, that the physicality, can bang with the big boys. Not a guy you could slot him at the 3 in the Rui role, right? But I think more likely than not, he's a guy that you're going to want to play the 4. But I also feel that same way about Rui Hachimura, right? I think Rui Hachimura should be the guy that's playing and slotted into the 4. So with this Lakers team, you never know, right? You could see Eric Dixon slotting at the 3. I just don't think he has the foot speed, just like Rui doesn't have the lateral quickness and foot speed to stay in front of guys. Eric Dixon's also older, 24 years old. Lakers have had a lot of success with just kind of older, veteran, experienced type of players, guys that had some seasoning coming in to the NBA. Like I mentioned, him being offensive ready and a guy that can make an immediate impact and, could solve some of our scoring woes off the bench, right? That's something that the Lakers could really use, right? The Lakers were one of the worst scoring benches in all of basketball last season. And a guy like Eric Dixon in, a two-way role that's maybe getting some minutes here and there or on the main roster role, Lakers are, at least at the time of recording this video, maybe it's already happened or whatnot, but there's talks about the Andrew Wiggins trade, and the Lakers are active in trying to do the Andrew Wiggins trade. You might need to bring somebody in cheap, and Eric Dixon is a guy that I think you could do that with. Eric Dixon is a guy that I think you could easily help this Lakers team immediately out the gate, and a guy you could run some plays with, catch and shoot 3, How much versatility and range would he get offensively is the question, right? So like to evaluate him on the main roster or on a two-way, it's tough because how much does he actually play on the actual main roster? And two, when he does play, I imagine they're probably not going to make him any type of focal point by any stretch, right? He's more likely than not going to be a guy that's kind of like what Rui becomes more often than not, is just relegated to a catch and shoot 3-point shooter, right? Like I look at like an Eric Dixon, he's a guy that, kind of can give you that scoring prowess. Like he's a guy that I wouldn't hate. Hey, the offense is a little stagnant. Throw Eric Dixon in and see if he can kind of generate you some offense because he can take guys off dribble. He can shoot over the top. He can, be a 3-level scorer for you. Right? Is he going to be to the level, like superstar level or anything like that? Probably not. He's probably closer to his ceiling than his floor. Right? Like, but he's a guy I wouldn't be shocked if on a random night drop 25. Like, hey, Eric Dixon's going to get some minutes tonight. And all of a sudden it's like, man, Eric Dixon's 6 of 8 from 3 and, hitting all these shots and just doing it because that's what he does. He's a bucket getter. He's a guy that can score the basketball, right? Like even if you just get into Eric Dixon and his stats a little bit here, last season, 35 games played, 35 games started. Obviously, want to be clear, these are college stats, so we don't know how they'll translate to the NBA, but they're all good signs here that should translate to the NBA. But we'll touch on that here in a moment. But 35 games played, 35 games started, just under 35 minutes per game, 34.8 to be exact, 17.1 field goal attempts per game, shot 45.1% from the floor, 3-point range on 7.2 attempts. 7.2 attempts in college. Right? Like, NBA, there's all kinds of guys that have 7.2 attempts. But in college, not a lot of guys that are doing that. Right? Especially forward, like 6'8", power forwards who are your bucket getter and leading scorer and the primary guy. But 7.2 field goal attempts from 3-point range. He shot 41%. He's a career in college 38.7% 3-point shooter. His outside of his freshman season, his worst shooting season was the previous year, in which he took 5 attempts, and he was still 35%. Which 5 attempts again in college is pretty good volume, right? For college games. But again, 7.2 attempts, shot 41% from 3-point range. Right? Like even if he drops off 4%, he'd still be great shooting the 3 ball for the Lakers. He'd still be a welcome addition for the Lakers shooting the basketball. I mean, he may end up even being one of our better 3-point shooters this season, if that was to happen. But 2-point range, 10 attempts. He shot 48.3% from 2-point range, which was the lowest of his college career. The previous low was 50% on the dot, and that was his second season. That was his sophomore year, in which he shot 50%. Free throw shooting, EFG of 53.7%, which is actually, again, in college, really good. Effective field goal percentage. Free throw shooting, he's a career 81.3% last season on 6.1 attempts. So again, good volume on all this stuff. Shot 81.3%. So he literally shot exactly his career average. So good free throw shooter, good 3-point shooter in college. Usually those are signs that like, hey, this guy is probably going to translate pretty well. This guy is probably going to do pretty well. Rebounding, right? 5.1 rebounds. He's a career 5.6 rebound a game guy. So 5.1 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, half a block, and 23.3 points per game. Again, he led the nation in scoring. So again, a guy that just, I really do think has a very good shot at making the main roster. I think has a very good shot at making, and is, I think, about as close to being locked at the final 2-way spot as it can get. The only way I see him making the main roster, like I mentioned, is if a trade happens, right? Lakers end up pulling off the Andrew Wiggins trade, and it's like, hey, we need to fill a roster spot, right? It's like, hey, let's just bring in Eric Dixon and see if he can be a bucket getter for you. It's like, who could we get other than that, right? I mean, obviously, if Al Horford or DeAnthony Melton or somebody like that is like, hey, Warriors are taking too long, we want to sign with you, then you go get one of those guys. But if it's like, okay, we can take a flyer on these random guys that are still available, or we can bring in Eric Dixon. I'd probably rather bring in the Eric Dixon because your roster's pretty much set at that point. Your rotation's set at that point. You're just looking to kind of fill in the back end of the roster. And now you got guys like, Dalton Connect. Well, you probably trade Dalton Connect in an Andrew Wiggins trade. But you have guys like Bronny James, Adu Thero, Eric Dixon, plus a couple two-way guys, Chris Minnan. You'd have at that point, probably, I'm hoping Arthur Kaluma, right? Arthur Kaluma's the other two-way guy, and then Christian Koloko would kind of be your 3 two-way guys, with the Lakers, like I mentioned, having Eric Dixon on the main roster. But I think realistically, he's probably that last two-way spot. Eric Dixon is a guy that I think I could see. I don't know if like starting level, right? I don't. His defense is questionable. Like there's things that are suspect about him. Like rebound. He's very Rui Hachimura, right? Remnant, right? Like he's a guy that you could see kind of playing the Rui role, slotting in, catch 2 3-point shooter, get the occasional. Hey, here's the ball. Go make a play. Go make a bucket. Right? Like that's where I kind of see him playing our Rui. He also could make potentially Rui Hachimura expendable. So if you do go trade, so that could be something the Lakers look at too, is like, how does he look in training? If like he's cooking and he's torching our defensive guys and whatnot, and he's looking very Rui Hachimura-esque, the Lakers could look at it as like, okay, fine, give up Rui, give up Connect, give up whatever you got to. Bring in Andrew Wiggins. Let's just bring in Eric Dixon into the main roster, and he can kind of be our Rui substitute, right? And kind of play that role. Problem is, like I said, Eric Dixon is him being 24 years old. He'll be 25 in January. He's a more seasoned player. Right? You're talking about him being. I mean, Rui himself is 27. Right? He'll be 28 in February. So he's got a couple years less than like a guy like a Rui Hachimura, but just like how much better will Eric Dixon be? Like, because I think him in that 6th man role off the bench, right? I'm not talking necessarily just about this season. I'm talking just generally him in that role of the 6th man off the bench kind of guy, just your bucket getter off the bench, I think is probably what he would be best for this Lakers team. That bench really lacks that depth in scoring. So if you could bring him on and, over the next 4 years or whatever, he's just like giving you 15 a game off the bench, I think he could slot in and play that role for you. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.